This is the inside deets on the movie Ghostbusters. You know that it was written by Dan Aykroyd. I originally thought it was only written by Harold Ramis. I didn't realize Dan Aykroyd wrote the very original screenplay. He got the idea because the house he lived in, he said, was rumored to have a ghost. That's where he got the idea for, and I don't want to say Ghostbusters because originally he called it Ghost Smashers. The other working titles they were going to call it other than Ghost Smashers was Ghost Stoppers.
Ghost Stoppers!
And Ghost Blasters.
Ghost Blasters!
So Dan Aykroyd's original screenplay was a lot different than the Ghostbusters we know. That one, the one he wrote, was very futuristic. They said the budget to make the original screenplay in the future, the way he had it written, would have cost too much money. So they asked Harold Ramis to come in and help write the screenplay with Dan Aykroyd. So the two of them came up with the Ghostbusters that we know. When you look up the movie, it lists 3 writers. It lists Dan Aykroyd as a credited writer, Harold Ramis as a credited writer. As an uncredited writer, it lists Rick Moranis, which I thought was interesting. So he's not credited for actually writing it, but I think he helped write it. So they put him down as uncredited. All right, Peter Venkman. So when Dan Aykroyd was writing the screenplay for Ghostbusters, he was writing Peter Venkman's character for John Belushi. John Belushi passed away while he was writing it. So then they had to consider some other actors. Before Bill Murray was given the part, other actors that were in contention for Peter Venkman was Robin Williams, Tom Hanks. Michael Keaton was offered 2 parts. He was offered Peter Venkman and Dr. Igor Spengler. He turned them both down. Michael Ensign auditioned for the part of Walter Peck. He didn't get it. As a consolation prize, they let him play the manager of the Sedgwick Hotel. So the part of Egon was not supposed to originally be played by Harold Ramis. He was just called on to write. After they had considered many people, he decided to take the part because they all felt that he was the best for that role. But they had Christopher Walken, John Lithgow, Christopher Lloyd. These are all big names. Jeff Goldblum. They were all considered for Egon. Part of Dana, played by Sigourney Weaver. Now, Sigourney Weaver had only played very dramatic roles. She was excited to play Ghostbusters because she wanted people to know that she had a comedic side to her. When they were auditioning her for the part, they said she hopped on the sofa and pretended to be a dog. Immediately, they knew that they wanted her. Julia Roberts auditioned for Dana Barrett, but they felt she was much too young for the part. Other people that were being considered for Dana Barrett, I'm going to read this list too, is Daryl Hannah, Denise Crosby, Marie Van Camp, and Kelly LeBrock. All right, Louis Tully. Did you know Jay Leno auditioned for the part of Louis Tully? More importantly, John Candy was supposed to get the part of Louis, but they had a difference of opinion. I don't think that it was like hard feelings or anything though, because when they did the Ghostbuster video, Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters video, he did a cameo in the video. A lot of people did the cameo in the video. He was one of them. But when he was going to do the part, he thought that that Louis should have a German accent and have 2 Schnauzer dogs, and it was just not the way they wanted to go. So John Candy ultimately didn't get the role. Also, Eddie Deezen was considered for the role. Do you remember who he is? The one who played the nerd in Grease. He was also considered for the role of Louis. The role of Janice, they were considering somebody else for that part. Sandra Bernhard. Do you remember her? Speaking of people being in the movie, these are some weird cameos that people I didn't remember being in the movie. I don't even remember hearing about this at the time. So there is a crowd scene outside the firehouse when they shut down the power and the containment center explodes or whatever. In the crowd scene, you can see Ron Jeremy. So he has a small cameo in this movie. Also, Patricia Heaton said that she had a very small cameo in the very beginning of the movie outside the library. She can be seen in the crowd. I couldn't find a picture of that though. Debbie Gibson. So you know the scene where Louis running from the dogs and he gets in front of the restaurant. He's outside there and the dogs are coming at him. There's a girl in the background with birthday balloons. It's her birthday. That is Debbie Gibson. Singer Debbie Gibson. Yeah, that's her. Casey Kasem has a cameo in this movie also. And then if you can remember the scene where Rick Moranis is having a party in his apartment. 2 things about the scene. One, he's dancing with a very tall woman. That woman is Jean Kasem, Casey Kasem's wife. But that scene, I thought this was so interesting. So that scene, a lot of this movie was ad-libbed. There's so much of this movie that was ad-libbed. Almost all of Bill Murray's scenes were ad-libbed at some point. What's interesting about that scene in Louis' apartment, and he's spouting off all the prices of stuff when he's talking to everybody at the party and hanging up coats and all that stuff. That entire scene is a one-shot scene. They did it in it's a one take. It's not cut up, okay? Which is hard to do. It's also hard to do is that Rick Moranis ad-libbed most of that scene, almost that entire scene. So it's all ad-libbed in one shot. I thought that was pretty amazing. So before the release of this film, they wanted to keep the hype of this film like really big. So instead of releasing a trailer, what they released was, if you remember the movie, they have a commercial where they're like, it's a Ghostbusters commercial. They released that commercial, except where the number to call was like a 555 number. They put a 1-800 number in that commercial. People could actually call the 1-800 number that was on there, and it would bring you to a Ghostbusters number, And you had Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd's voice, and it would say, "Hi, we're out chasing ghosts right now," or something to that effect. So people were calling that number. They said they would get thousands of phone calls an hour, 24 hours a day for weeks. Also, they had the Ghostbuster car. They had that car driving around the streets of Manhattan before the movie came out, just to keep the hype going. When they filmed the scenes of, now we call him Slimer the ghost, but when they filmed that scene where he's eating off the cart, they tried to mimic that scene from the scene of John Belushi in Animal House when he's eating in the cafeteria. But Dan Aykroyd on set always called him the ghost of John Belushi. Ghostbusters became the highest grossing comedy film of all time until Home Alone came out. Now the demonic voice of Dana when she's Zool, that voice was Ivan Reitman. So the Ghostbuster logo, this ghost, Harvey Comics, now Harvey Comics was the people who developed Casper the Friendly Ghost, okay, filed a suit against Ghostbusters saying that their ghost Fatso from the comic looks just like this ghost, the Ghostbuster ghost, and they took them to court and they lost. The judge said there's only so many ways you can draw a ghost, so they lost that lawsuit. The Stay Puft Marshmallow, Dan Aykroyd said he came up with that. He said it's sort of like he took the Michelin Man and the Pillsbury Doughboy and kind of joined them together. That suit cost $20,000 to make, the Stay Puft Marshmallow suit. They went through 3 of those suits. All 3 of those suits were destroyed making the movie. Now, when all the people get hit with the marshmallow at the end, that was menthol shaving cream. Speaking of the shaving cream, so William Atherton, he played Walter Peck. And when they were filming that final scene where the marshmallow is supposed to hit him, they said, okay, you're going to get hit with a bunch of, it's shaving cream, but they were putting him in these laundry bags. It was 75 pounds. And he said, what's that going to do to me? And they're like, oh, it's shaving cream. He's like, it's still 75 pounds. And they thought he was being like a crybaby about it. So they said, okay, fine. We'll put the stunt double in. We'll test it out. Put the stunt double in. They seriously thought he was being the biggest baby about it. They dropped the 75 pounds of shaving cream on him. And the stunt double was flattened out. It hit him so hard. So they had to take like at least half of the shaving cream out, probably more, before they could do it. And he was like, I told you so. All right, Echo 1, the Ghostbusters car. That car was supposed to be black. They intended it to be black, but then they realized they were shooting a lot of scenes at night and that nobody would see the car, and that's why the car was like that white, dirty white color. Ernie Hudson plays the part of Winston. The part was supposed to be much bigger. It was supposed to be much bigger because Eddie Murphy was slated to play Winston, and he had to back out because he got the lead for Beverly Hills Cop. And after Eddie Murphy backed out, because they were kind of revolving that character around him, once he backed out, they really shrunk that character. This I found really interesting. So the fountain scene with Venkman and Dana, you will see flags at the half-mast in the background. So in 1983, America was mourning the loss of American soldiers and French soldiers. There was a barracks bombing. It was in Beirut, Lebanon on October 23rd, 1983. So all of our flags were at half-mast, and you can see that in the fountain scene. The Ghostbusters song, we're going to finish with that. So Ray Parker Jr., we all know, is famous for the Ghostbusters song. Prior to him getting slated to do the song, they offered the song to Lindsey Buckingham. He turned it down. They also offered it to Huey Lewis and the News. Now this is an important little factor that comes into play. Huey Lewis and the News turned it down. Ray Parker Jr. Only had a very, very short amount of time to do the song, and he didn't know what to do with it, and he was watching some clips, and he saw the part where they do the commercial, the Ghostbusters commercial, so he decided to do it more like a faux jingle, and that's where he got the thing, Who You Gonna Call? Ghostbusters. And the song was a blockbuster hit, and it was #1 in 7 countries and in the top 10 in 11 countries. It's what he's known for. Huey Lewis and the News filed a lawsuit against him saying that he stole the bass line of one of their songs to make this song, and that was I Want a New Drug. When Ray Parker Jr. did get the video, the movie, to make the song, they said that they were hoping Huey Lewis and the News was going to do the music at first, right? Remember I said that? So they had dubbed in his song for all the parts that his song was going to be played. They said that kind of could have influenced them. They're not sure. They filed a lawsuit. They went to court. They settled out of court. Ray Parker Jr. paid him a sum of money. It was undisclosed, and it was supposed to be sealed and confidential. Other musicians have come out and say they think it's unjust because there were so many other differences in the songs. The bass line may have been similar, but I don't know a lot about music, but different tempos and beats and all were different, and they thought that it wasn't fair. They wound up settling out of court, and then they signed confidentiality clauses not to talk about it. Huey Lewis later came out, and he was being interviewed and decided to talk about the case. Now, we weren't allowed to talk about the case, but he talked about the case. So Ray Parker Jr. then sued him and got a lot of his money back, or some of his money back. I don't know the amount because it's supposed to be undisclosed. But Ray Parker Jr. won that lawsuit because he broke confidentiality. Anyway, that's the inside deets on the movie Ghostbusters. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters.